Okay, let's just start with this, right? If you genuinely believed, like deep down, that your vote counted for absolutely nothing, would you still bother?
Mm-hmm.
Welcome to the deep dive. We're really going there today.
We are.
We're diving headfirst into democracy,
Yeah.
pulling apart all those things we just assume.
Yeah, the things we take for granted.
Our mission today, to get you listening right now, to
Ah.
really look at what you believe about how we're governed and, whether it actually matters.
It's a necessary thing to do, I think, especially now. There's so much noise, so many opinions flying around.
Right.
So pausing to really dissect the foundations, it's not just academic, it's essential. We're not looking for neat answers, are we?
Definitely not. More
Nah.
like clarity, a
Mm.
clearer view of the whole messy landscape.
Exactly.
So let's throw a real curveball out there right at the start.
Okay.
Imagine this. Perfect governance. Guaranteed.
Yeah.
Absolutely flawless. No corruption, no screw-ups, just brilliant decisions for everyone.
Sounds unlikely, but okay. The catch.
The catch is you lose your say completely. No voting, no protesting, no input, nada.
Ah.
Would you take that deal? Would that perfect, efficient utopia be worth giving up your democratic voice? What's
Yeah.
that voice really worth to you?
Wow. That cuts right to it, doesn't it? It
Yeah.
forces you to weigh things up.
Yeah.
That basic human need for self-determination versus, efficiency, maybe even a better outcome potentially.
It's authoritarian.
It's authoritarian, exactly. So it makes you ask, what is democracy really? Beyond just, ticking a box, is it about the results or is it about having agency, having a say?
I have to confess something here.
Oh,
There was an election not that long ago, pretty major one, and I didn't vote.
okay.
I told myself it was like a protest,
Yeah.
against the system, the choices.
Mm-hmm.
But if I'm being really honest, deep down, it was more that I felt, powerless, like my single vote was just pointless,
Yeah.
drop in the ocean. And it was just easier to stay home than to face that feeling, that insignificance. Be honest, have you ever felt that?
Yeah.
The democratic duty is just going through the motions.
Oh, absolutely. That feeling, it's surprisingly common. It really highlights this paradox in big democracies.
How so?
Well, you've got the ideal, right? Individual agency, your voice matters. But then there's the reality. You're just one person among millions.
Yeah.
And that feeling, it can lead to apathy, like you said.
Yeah.
Or sometimes it pushes people to find other ways to engage, maybe more locally, more directly. But what does that feeling itself say about how healthy our democracy feels to people?
And speaking of having a voice,
Yeah.
we talk a big game about free speech, don't we?
It's foundational, supposedly.
Right, cornerstone of democracy.
Yeah.
But then, what happens when that speech gets nasty, hateful, or it incites violence, or it's just plain offensive?
Mm-hmm.
Suddenly, that whole commitment to absolute free speech feels shaky, doesn't it?
It always does.
So where do you draw the line? Is there speech a democracy should shut down?
Yeah.
And isn't that urge wanting to silence speech we hate?
Mm.
Isn't that kind of undemocratic itself?
That's the perennial battleground, isn't it? The edges of free speech. It's always this really delicate balancing act
Between what?
between protecting the open exchange of ideas, even the really unpopular, nasty ones, and, preventing actual harm to people, harm to society.
Yeah.
And historically, as thinkers like Socrates found out the hard way, defining what's acceptable speech can easily become a weapon if you're not careful. So what principles should even guide that?
Okay, think about social media for a second. Your feed.
Right.
Chances are it's a pretty tight echo chamber,
Yeah.
right? Feeding you stuff you already agree with.
The algorithm's job. Keep you clicking.
Exactly. But is that actually helping democratic dialogue? Or is it just trapping us, making opposing views totally invisible or just caricatures?
Mm-hmm. Creating bubbles.
When was the last time you, personally, really tried to understand where someone online was coming from? Someone with completely opposite views. Did you just scroll past, maybe fire off a quick reply, or did you genuinely try to see their logic?
It's tough. The whole digital landscape has changed political engagement. On the one hand, connection like never before.
Sure.
On the other, these algorithmic echo chambers, they drive polarization. They make it harder to feel empathy, to understand anyone outside your bubble.
So what does that do long term, if we're all living in separate realities?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? It doesn't feel sustainable for a functioning democracy.
And we talk about the will of the people, like it's this single wise thing.
Almost sacred.
But what if, most of the time, it's just the loudest people?
Wow.
The angriest voices dominating everything, drowning out the quieter, maybe more thoughtful majority.
Yeah, it's a huge risk.
Does our system accidentally amplify the extremes? Does the squeaky wheel always dissolve the grease in politics?
Well, that idea of a single will of the people, it's mostly a myth. A useful one sometimes, but still a simplification.
How so?
Public opinion is rarely uniform, and it's easily swayed by intensity, by how well groups mobilize and shout.
Right.
So a key challenge for any democracy is figuring out how to make sure all voices get heard, not just the loudest ones. How do you even achieve that balance?
I had this off-the-record chat once with a politician.
Oh, yeah. Juicy.
Sort of. They
Yeah.
basically admitted, look, we don't lead, we follow the polls.
Wow. Honest, at least.
Yeah. Even if the polls are wrong, even if they're leading us off a cliff,
Uh,
that's where we go. It keeps us in power.
oof.
It really made me think, is that the leadership democracy gives us just weather vanes, reflecting whatever way the wind blows, however misguided.
That really hits on a fundamental tension, doesn't it? Should leaders just reflect public opinion, or should they exercise judgment? Lead. Maybe even educate the public, even if it's unpopular.
Yeah.
It's a tightrope walk. Representation versus, well, actual leadership. Where does accountability stop and just abdicating responsibility begin?
Okay, this next one might sting a bit for everyone listening, including us.
Yeah.
Are you really informed enough for the kind of complex decisions democracy asks of you? Do you genuinely get the details of policies, the global impacts?
Mm-hmm.
Or are you, like, let's be honest, like most of us, running on headlines, gut feelings, quick takes? Be brutally honest with yourself. What's the real gap between your civic duty to be informed and your actual knowledge?
That ideal of the informed citizen, it's essential to democratic theory, absolutely. But the reality, information overload, complex issues, there's often a huge gap.
So what do we do about it?
It raises big questions about education, media literacy, personal responsibility. Socrates was right, wasn't he? Wisdom starts with knowing what you don't know.
Yeah.
How comfortable are we admitting that, though, especially in politics?
Churchill. We always hear that quote, right? Democracy is the worst form of government except for all the others.
Yep, trotted out constantly.
But what if that's not praise? What if it's just weariness, a sigh, like accepting the least terrible option? Interesting take.
Shouldn't we aim higher than not the absolute worst? Is that, quote, wisdom, or is it just a failure of imagination, giving up on finding something better?
It's definitely pragmatic, maybe even pessimistic. It acknowledges democracy is flawed, messy.
But should we settle for least worst? Or keep striving? What does that resignation say about our belief in progress?
Exactly. Does it let us off the hook too easily?
Let's jump back. Ancient Athens, cradle of democracy.
Right, where it all began. Sort of.
The who killed Socrates, sentenced him to death for what? Questioning things? Annoying the powerful?
For corrupting the youth and impiety, officially. But yeah, basically for questioning the status quo.
So it makes you wonder, do modern democracies still silence dissent? Just, more subtly.
How do you mean?
Maybe not with poison, but cancel culture, online shaming, deplatforming. Are we actually any more tolerant of truly challenging ideas than they were? That's a really uncomfortable comparison, isn't it? Socrates' fate is a stark reminder. Even democracies can crush dissent.
So the methods change, but the tension remains.
Absolutely. The tension between majority rule and protecting minority views, especially the ones that challenge norms, it's still a massive issue. How do we protect debate without letting society tear itself apart? Or, conversely, how do we ensure cohesion doesn't just mean silencing necessary criticism?
Okay, take a quiet moment. Really think. When was the last time democracy genuinely surprised you with its wisdom? Not just an election you liked, but a collective choice that felt insightful. A good step forward you didn't expect.
That's a tough one.
Or does it mostly just feel predictable, maybe disappointing? Compromises, frustrations, same old arguments. Where's the magic? Do you still see any?
Reflecting on those moments of surprise, or the lack of them, tells us a lot about our expectations versus the reality.
Yeah?
It makes you think about what actually drives progress versus stagnation in these systems. Does predictability mean stability, or does it mean it's stuck?
We criticize political dynasties, right?
Yeah.
Power handed down in families.
Sure. Nepotism, privilege.
But what about our own beliefs? How many of your core political ideas, the really fundamental stuff, did you just inherit? From family, friends, your community, without ever really stress testing them?
Ouch. Good question.
Are your convictions truly yours? Or are they hand-me-downs you haven't examined?
That's political socialization, right? We all absorb beliefs from our environment.
But is that good enough?
Well, critical thinking demands we look at where our beliefs came from. Actively seek out other views, not just passively accept what we're given. Jung talked about individuation, right? Differentiating yourself from the collective. How much have we really individuated our political selves?
Dark hypothetical time.
Lay it on me.
Option A, a deeply flawed democracy. Messy, frustrating. But your side, your team, sometimes wins. You get a taste of power now and then. Option B, a non-democratic system. Seems fair on the surface, incredibly efficient, society runs smoothly, but your side's views. Totally irrelevant, you have zero input, zero chance of winning, but maybe things are better overall.
Wow, okay.
What do you choose? The messy game where you might win, or the potentially better outcome where you have no say at all? What do you actually prioritize?
That forces a really uncomfortable choice. The chaos and potential wins of democracy versus predictable, maybe even better outcomes, but with no agency.
Yeah.
It really exposes what we value more. Participation, the game itself, or the substantive results, the societal condition. Which weighs more for you?
Watch any online political debate. Twitter, Facebook, wherever.
Okay. Painful, but okay.
How many people are genuinely trying to understand the other side?
Yeah.
Versus how many are just waiting to jump in, score points, win with a zinger?
Mostly the latter, feels like.
Be honest now. When you get into it online, what's your goal? Enlightenment or victory? Dropping the mic.
The whole setup online, the incentives, it rewards performance, not understanding, sound bites over substance.
So it's not really dialogue.
It often feels more like gladiators, right? Who wins, who loses, not what can we learn here and what gets lost in that digital fight. Any chance of common ground.
Okay, rapid fire questions.
Yeah.
Real gut checks.
All right.
Would you vote for a policy you truly believed was good for the country, even if it cost you personally? Significantly.
Hope so.
If an election result came out that you hated, like viscerally despised, would you still accept its legitimacy? If the process was fair,
That's the acid test, isn't it?
is your main loyalty to democracy itself, the principles, or is it to seeing your side win no matter what it takes, no matter the cost to the system?
These really probe how deep that commitment to democratic ideals goes, beyond just self-interest or tribal loyalty.
Yeah.
They expose those conflicts. Personal gain versus common good versus accepting the outcome even when it stings. Where do your loyalties really fall when the chips are down?
I struggle with this one constantly. I believe in the wisdom of the crowd, right? This idea that groups, collectively, can be smarter than individuals.
Classic idea.
But then I look around. I look at myself sometimes. How easily swayed we are by bad info, by emotion, by manipulation.
We're all vulnerable.
So how do those two things fit together? How can a bunch of flawed, often irrational individuals reliably produce wise collective decisions? Is it just faith, a long-shot hope?
Well, the wisdom of the crowd thing, it works under certain conditions, right?
Yeah.
Diverse opinions, independent thinking, a good way to aggregate the views.
And when those conditions aren't met?
Then the crowd can be,
Well,
a mob,
Yep.
but reflecting all the biases and bad information floating around. It's not a guarantee, it's a potential. What's undermining that potential right now? Lots of things, probably.
I had this conversation once with a refugee from a country with zero democracy. Absolutely none.
Okay.
And they said really quietly, in my country, we had no vote. Here, you have one, but you fight so bitterly over things that, to us, seem like incredible luxuries.
Wow. That puts things in perspective.
Totally stop me. Does that kind of perspective, does it mean our complaints about our own democracies are invalid? Or does it just give us some much-needed context? Maybe some humility?
It's powerful context, for sure. A reminder of what's at stake, what can be lost.
But it doesn't mean we shouldn't criticize our own systems.
No, I don't think so. It doesn't negate legitimate criticism, but it frames it differently. Maybe encourages gratitude alongside the critique,
Yeah.
but definitely not complacency. How does hearing that shift your own view of the problems we focus on?
Here's a really uncomfortable truth. We don't like talking about it.
Go on.
Sometimes what the majority wants, it's not good. It's not ethical. It might even be harmful long-term.
History has examples. Plenty.
So democracy doesn't automatically mean moral outcomes, does it? Popular will can lead to terrible things. Is there anything inherently good about a decision just because most people voted for it?
That's a dangerous idea that majority rule equals morality. It's a fallacy.
But it's the core of democracy, isn't it? Majority rule.
It's a core procedure, yes. But it doesn't guarantee ethical results. That's why you need safeguards, right? Minority rights, human rights protections, basic moral principles that stand alongside, or sometimes even against the majority's will. What happens when popular will clashes with basic ethics? That's a crucial test.
We see so much activism online now. Hashtags for global change, profile, pick borders for solidarity.
Clickativism, some call it.
Right. But how much of that passion translates into actual action on the ground, in local communities, in people's own lives?
That's the big question.
Is clicking like or sharing a post the new civic duty? Is it performance replacing real engagement?
Social media activism has definitely changed things. It raises awareness, mobilizes people quickly sometimes.
But does it change policy? Does it build anything lasting?
The jury's still out on the real impact, isn't it? Does it empower people to do more, or does it just make them feel like they've done enough already? Placate them.
Okay, think about how you see people who vote for the other side, the ones you really disagree with. Ever catch yourself thinking they're all just ignorant, misguided, maybe even bad people?
It happens. It's easy to do.
Now flip it. Realize they probably think the exact same things about you and your choices.
Ouch. Yeah.
Democracy kind of needs a basic level of respect for different views, right? Even the ones you find baffling or offensive. How are we doing on that front as a society?
Not great, feels like. That tendency to just demonize the other side.
Yeah.
It's corrosive.
So what's the antidote?
Empathy. Trying to have actual conversations. Acknowledging that people can see things differently without being evil or stupid. It's hard work. Nietzsche said even enemies offer valuable perspectives. Are we willing to listen?
I knew this guy once.
Yeah.
Always railing against government corruption, waste, inefficiency. Loudly.
Yeah.
But then, come tax time, he'd spend hours finding every single loophole, every questionable deduction, basically cheating the system he claimed to despise.
The hypocrisy.
It made me wonder, what does real civic duty look like? Is it just voting and complaining? Or is it also about, well, not cheating on your taxes? The small, everyday stuff. Where does personal honesty connect with the bigger picture?
Civic duty is broad, isn't it? It's voting, sure.
Yeah.
But it's also following the law, paying your share, contributing locally. It needs consistency between what we say publicly and what we do privately. Is there a gap in your own life? We should all ask that.
Let's try a thought experiment. Flip the perspective.
Okay.
Imagine other countries looking at your democracy, our democracy. What flaws would jump out at them? The crazy partisanship, the money in politics, the low voter turnout sometimes.
Yeah, they might see things we've gotten used to.
Could it be that the system we fiercely defend is actually seen by others as kind of a mess, maybe even a warning, something allowed not to have?
Taking that outside perspective is valuable, humbling, maybe?
Challenges the whole beacon of democracy idea.
It forces us to see our own system not as the default, but as one option among many, with its own unique set of problems. What blind spots does that reveal?
When you're in a political argument online, with family, wherever, what's your main goal? Are you genuinely open, trying to understand?
Yeah.
Or are you just reloading, waiting for your turn to talk, rehearsing your points?
Guilty as charged sometimes, probably.
It often feels less like dialogue, more like two separate monologues happening near each other, ships passing in the night. Why is that so common?
Real dialogue needs active listening, trying to grasp the other view, willingness to maybe even shift your own stance a little.
And we don't do that.
Often the goal becomes winning, asserting your view, not understanding. So you got parallel monologues. What stops us from actually hearing each other? Ego, fear.
History lesson time. Sobering one.
Right.
Democracies don't usually collapse overnight in some big revolution. More often, it's a slow creep, an erosion of norms, institutions weakening.
Death by 1,000 cuts.
Yeah. And sometimes people even cheer it on initially because they're frustrated and some strongman promises easy fixes.
Seen that pattern before.
Does any of that sound familiar?
Okay.
Today, could we be in that slow slide right now, maybe without even fully realizing it? Or worse, maybe welcoming parts of it?
Looking at history, that gradual decay, the weakening of norms, the vulnerability, it's a recurring theme. Recognizing those patterns now is crucial. Are we seeing subtle shifts we're ignoring or explaining away?
Okay, here's a weird twist. An unsettling thought.
Go on.
What if democracy isn't really a specific system of government at all? What if it's more like a collective story, a shared delusion we tell ourselves?
A delusion? To what end?
To avoid facing a scarier truth, that maybe nobody's really in control, that it's all more chaotic and uncertain than we want to admit. Is rule by the people just a comforting myth?
That's profoundly unsettling, suggesting the order we perceive is just a psychological safety blanket, managing chaos.
Could be.
It challenges everything we assume about governing ourselves. If it is a delusion, what purpose does it serve? And what happens if it shatters?
When you defend democracy so passionately, what are you really defending? Is it the pure ideal? Equal rights, representation for all?
Oh.
Or are you, maybe subconsciously, defending the current setup where your group, your ideology, has a better shot at power, a system that favors your preferences? What are the hidden stakes for you?
Examining those motives. Are we defending universal principles or our team's advantage? It demands real self-awareness about our own biases. As Nietzsche might put it, is it the will to power disguised as high principle?
Okay, just pause.
Mm.
Seriously, take a breath. After all this, all the critiques, the flaws,
Mm.
is there still a part of you that just knows your side has the answers? That if you people were in charge, things would finally be right? Just hold that feeling. Where does that certainty actually come from?
That unwavering certainty. It's common, right? Confirmation bias, wanting simple answers.
But is it realistic?
Critical thinking means constantly questioning that certainty, especially in politics. How open are you, really, to the idea that you might not have all the answers, that your side might be wrong about some things?
Here's a thought I want you to take away. The biggest danger in a democracy, it might not be the bad leaders it sometimes produces.
No, is it then?
It's the citizens it allows to just stay asleep. Uninformed, disengaged, comfortable, oblivious to the stakes.
An active, informed, critical public. That's the lifeblood. Apathy, ignorance, lack of critical thought, that's what makes it vulnerable. It undermines the whole idea of self-governance.
So let's loop all the way back. That first question. The benevolent dictator.
Yeah.
Perfect world, no voice.
Right?
What would you honestly choose? Just you, alone, no one watching?
Right.
What does that gut reaction tell you about what you truly value?
It really boils down to that personal, fundamental choice, doesn't it? About our relationship with the whole idea of democracy. It goes way beyond just voting.
If any of this made you uncomfortable,
Yeah.
made you think, good, that was the point.
Mm.
Maybe share this deep dive with someone you know who seems absolutely certain about their politics, someone on the complete opposite side. See what happens. Maybe it sparks a different kind of conversation, or just productive discomfort.
Those difficult conversations, even when they feel pointless, are vital. Trying to understand across divides, it's hard, but necessary for a diverse society to function.
What if our belief in the people, this collective wisdom, what if it's just a coping mechanism?
How so?
A way to avoid the tough, lonely job of making individual decisions, taking individual responsibility? Are we just outsourcing our judgment?
Relying on the collective can definitely feel safer than standing alone with your choices. Balancing that individual agency with collective action, it's key to understanding how we really engage or don't engage.
Which is worse, living under obvious brutal tyranny, where everyone knows the score, versus living in a democracy that talks a good game freedom, equality, but masks deep problems, delivers unfair results. Which illusion is more damaging? That's a tough one. Overt tyranny is brutal, clear.
Yeah.
But a dysfunctional democracy that pretends to be fair, that can breed cynicism, disillusionment, it can make people give up on the whole idea, maybe making real change even harder.
You see it online all the time. People treating opponents like NTCs in a video game. Glitches to be mocked or defeated.
Dehumanizing them.
Exactly. What does that do in the real world when we stop seeing opponents as people?
It destroys any chance of finding common ground, of empathy. It fuels division. It makes democracy impossible, really. We have to see the shared humanity, even in people we strongly disagree with.
Picture this. You have to explain to a starving child that their hunger is okay, it's justifiable, because the democratic process that led to it was followed correctly.
Well, that's brutal.
That's it. When does sticking to the process become less important than the actual human outcome, the justice of it? That image really highlights the limits of just focusing on procedure, doesn't it? When faced with basic human needs, basic justice, it forces the question, what's the ultimate point of any political system if not human well-being? Is process enough if the results are unjust?
Okay, quick mental check. What are your core political truths? The things you believe deep down, rarely question. Now, honestly ask, whose agenda might those unquestioned beliefs serve? Who benefits from you holding on to those specific ideas so firmly?
That's deep self-inquiry, looking at the roots of our own assumptions, the biases hidden within them. It's essential for independent thought, for not just swallowing narratives whole.
You know, sometimes I feel we're so careful, so politically correct about democracy's virtues, praising the ideal so much.
That we what?
That we forget how to have an honest, maybe messy, maybe incorrect thought about its real flaws. Are we afraid to criticize it meaningfully anymore?
That pressure to conform, even around good ideals, can stifle real critique. Honest assessment. Exploring the problems openly is vital for any system to evolve, isn't it?
I heard this story once. An old activist fought their whole life for voting rights,
Yeah.
and late in life confessed feeling disappointed. Not in the right itself, but in how people used it or didn't use it.
Wow. That's poignant.
Makes you think about unintended consequences, right?
Mm.
Even from noble fights.
It shows that securing a right is one thing. Ensuring it's used meaningfully, responsibly, that's another ongoing struggle. It's about civic education, engagement, not just the legal right.
What about participating in a system you think is fundamentally broken? Rigged, corrupted, whatever.
A common feeling these days.
Is participating just legitimizing it? Does it make you complicit? Or is working from within the only hope? When does not participating become the more ethical choice?
That's a massive ethical dilemma, weighing the chance to make change from inside against the risk of propping up a bad system. There's no easy answer to that calculus. It's deeply personal.
We like to imagine ourselves as potential revolutionaries, right? Standing up when things get really bad.
The heroic fantasy.
But how often do we challenge the small stuff? Minor injustices at work, in our communities. Does the big courage depend on practicing the small, everyday kind?
Absolutely. Moral courage isn't just for huge crises. It's built in those everyday moments.
Yeah.
Challenging the small wrongs, speaking up when it's uncomfortable. Integrity is a habit, not an emergency switch.
Here's a chilling thought for you.
Okay.
You don't need some evil genius plotting democracy's downfall. All you might need is enough apathy, enough ignorance, enough people just checking out.
Neglect can be fatal.
Yeah, the absence of engagement can be just as damaging as an active attack.
Apathy and ignorance create the vulnerability. The health of democracy relies entirely on citizens being active, informed, engaged. Neglect is a quiet surrender.
Who even gets to say what a successful democracy is?
Good question.
Political scientists, politicians, the elites? Or is it something more personal, something each of us has to define?
The definition itself is contested, isn't it? Depends on your values, your priorities. Ideally, it's a conversation for everyone, not just the experts or the powerful. What are your metrics for success?
I used to think endless debate was the sign of a healthy democracy. Vigorous discussion.
The marketplace of ideas.
Right. But now, sometimes I wonder, does all the talking just become paralysis? Do we debate endlessly instead of acting on problems? Is it always progress, or can it be avoidance?
Debate is crucial, yes. But without the ability to eventually make decisions and act, it can definitely become a trap, a way to feel like you're doing something without actually changing anything. Finding that balance between deliberation and action is key.
A historian once told me something simple but haunting.
What was it?
Democracies usually don't die violently. They commit suicide. Slowly. By choosing comfort over courage. Entertainment over engagement.
Oof, that lands.
Ponder that. What comforts are we choosing right now that might be weakening the whole thing?
It's a stark reminder. The threat isn't just external, it's internal. Our own choices, our priorities, our vigilance, or lack thereof. Complacency kills.
There's probably some truth about your own democratic participation,
Yeah.
or lack of it, that you avoid thinking about.
We all have them.
A little compromise made, a lazy assumption, a bias you ignore. Deep down, you know what it is. That's the uncomfortable thing you sidestep.
Self-awareness about those inconsistencies, those little hypocrisies.
Yeah.
It's the first step, isn't it? Acknowledging the uncomfortable truth is necessary before you can do anything about it.
Have you ever voted, not for someone or something, but just against the alternative, out of fear?
Negative partisanship. Voting against the other guy.
Yeah. How much of our politics now is driven by that? Fear of the other side, fear of catastrophe, instead of, actual hope or conviction.
It can be pragmatic sometimes, choosing the lesser evil. But if that's all that's driving participation, it suggests a deeper problem, doesn't it? A lack of inspiring choices, maybe? A weakening of positive vision.
Maybe the whole idea of a perfect government system is just a fantasy.
Utopia is nowhere.
Right. Maybe every system, including democracy, is just trade-offs, balancing competing values, imperfect results. Maybe democracy's trick is just being better at hiding its costs, even from us. What are the hidden costs we don't talk about?
Accepting that imperfection, that all systems involve trade-offs. It allows for a more realistic view. Less idealism, more focus on practical problems and reforms, seeing the strengths and the weaknesses clearly.
Here's a slightly paranoid thought. Maybe you're not really an empowered citizen participant.
What am I then?
Maybe you're just a data point, fed into algorithms, your preferences analyzed, used to target messages, shape the next campaign. Are you driving, or are you just data being driven?
The rise of micro-targeting and data analysis in politics definitely blurs that line. It raises huge questions about agency, manipulation, and what participation even means now.
Imagine your party, the one you back, asks you to betray a core moral principle. For a big win, power is within reach, but you have to cross that line.
Hmm. The ultimate loyalty test.
Where does your allegiance lie? Party first, or conscience first, even if it means losing?
That conflict between partisanship and personal ethics. It's a crucial test. Sticking to your conscience, even when it costs your side politically, might be the most important safeguard we have against extremism and moral decay in politics.
We can't really fix democracy's flaws until we admit something, maybe.
What's that?
How much we secretly enjoy the drama, the outrage circus, the villains and heroes narrative. Does our addiction to the political spectacle get in the way of actually fixing things?
That focus on the drama, the emotion, the personalities, it can absolutely distract from the real, complex issues and hinder thoughtful solutions. Recognizing that distraction is step one.
Wildest hypothetical yet. What if proof emerged? Irrefutable proof. The whole democratic show, elections, debates, sovereignty, it's all fake. Managed by unseen hands.
Oh, wow. Like the Matrix, but for politics.
Would you want to know the truth? Or would the comforting lie be too hard to give up? What's the cost of knowing?
That pits our desire for truth against our need for stability, for meaning, for believing in something. Would shattering the illusion be liberating or just devastating? It forces a confrontation with reality itself.
Big difference between a thoughtful, researched opinion, vital for democracy, and
Yeah.
the algorithm-fueled rage you see online. One builds, maybe. The other just burns. Can you tell the difference in your own feeds, in your own reactions?
That distinction is crucial. Informed opinion seeks understanding, engages complexity. Algorithm-driven rage often just seeks validation, conflict, clicks. One is fuel, the other is fire. We have to be able to tell them apart.
Think about the future. Generations looking back at this time. Democratic norms, shaky, lots of anxiety.
Yeah.
What will you tell them you did? What's your explanation for your silence? Or your inaction? Or maybe just your performative online anger that didn't actually achieve anything? How will history judge us?
Thinking about that legacy, how will future generations see our choices? It's a powerful motivator, isn't it, to engage more meaningfully now? What kind of democratic inheritance are we leaving?
Maybe democracy isn't overrated or underrated. Maybe it's just a mirror.
Reflecting what?
Reflecting us, exactly who we are. Flawed, hopeful, sometimes inspiring, always searching for something bigger to believe in.
So the state of the democracy is just the state of us. That's a powerful, maybe sobering thought. It puts the responsibility squarely back on the citizens.
Another confession, I've definitely felt that flicker of satisfaction. When my side wins an election, knowing it's bad news for people I disagree with.
That tribal win feeling.
Yeah, it's ugly, that raw tribalism democracy can feed. And it's a constant fight, for me anyway, to see it and push back against it in myself. Can you relate?
Oh, yeah. Acknowledging that tendency towards tribalism in ourselves and others. It's crucial if we want to reduce its damage. Recognizing it is the first step to maybe choosing differently.
Let's just be honest. We're probably all hypocrites sometimes when it comes to democracy.
How so?
We praise the ideals but fall short in practice. We demand things of others we don't do ourselves. But maybe admitting that hypocrisy openly is the real starting point for getting better.
Recognizing our own inconsistencies, it allows for more honesty, doesn't it? And maybe more effective action. Humility can actually be a catalyst for change.
Remember way back,
Yeah.
that first question. If your vote didn't change the world, would you still do it? I've been thinking about it. Maybe the answer isn't about changing the world. Maybe it's about how the act changes you.
How voting changes the voter.
Yeah, the act of engaging, of participating, even if it feels small. It does something to you. It affirms your agency, your belonging. Whether it shifts the election result, maybe that's less important than how it shifts you.
That's interesting. Participation itself as intrinsically valuable for the individual's sense of self, their civic identity. Engagement as empowerment, regardless of the immediate outcome.
So, my final thought, the
What?
mic drop, if you will.
Okay, let's have it.
Democracy massively overrated.
Yeah.
If you think it's some perfect destination, we'll just arrive at one day. But it's wildly underrated. If you see it for what it is, a daily fight, messy, frustrating, often infuriating, but maybe essential and maybe even beautiful in its own way.
Embracing that struggle, seeing it as ongoing, dynamic, always challenged. It's not a place you arrive at, it's something you do every day. It's a verb, not a noun.
If this rattled you, if it made you question things,
Yeah.
good.
Mm?
Maybe listen again sometime, see if it hits differently.
Challenging ideas often sink in deeper over time. New connections emerge.
And if it sparked a new question, share it. Talk about it, especially with someone who seems to have unquestioning faith in the system as it is. Maybe you can both explore some new territory together.
Fostering that dialogue, even when uncomfortable, across divides, it's how we strengthen understanding and maybe strengthen democracy itself.
This has been The Deep Dive. We're not here to tell you what to think about democracy, just to push you to examine why you believe what you do, to maybe democratize your own mind, one question at a time.